Welcome to What's Important to You, the podcast where we explore purpose, passion, and the moments that truly matter. I'm James Dean, and each week I sit down with inspiring guests to uncover what drives them, inspires them, and what's important to them. Today's conversation is a powerful reminder that success isn't just about wealth. It's about health, purpose, and the legacy we choose to leave behind. My guest works with accomplished women to reconnect with their well-being, their wealth, and the impact they want to make in the world. We explore why health is foundational, how women are stepping into greater financial leadership, and why generosity can enhance both self-worth and net worth. This is a thoughtful conversation about living fully, leading boldly, and making your life count. Today, we find out what's important to Nancy Griffin. Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, James. Happy 2026.
Absolutely. As I just said before we came on, my first recording of this year. So delighted you're here. So we're going to dive straight in with the first question, Nancy, which is what's important to you?
Well, I think what's really, really important to me is that you live your life and you love your life and you make the most of your life. Because to have a life is to have a real privilege. We know what in the world is going on, and not everybody is as lucky as we are. So, really, in order to honor that luck, live your life and love your life.
Yeah, it's a really, I mean, so in the context of everything that's going on at the moment, it's such an important message, not just obviously we won't go into it necessarily in relation to the world as it is at large and everything, but even just obviously this time of year as well. So is that a philosophy you've always had, would you say?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
And the more I've been doing these podcast interviews, the more profound it becomes because you
Mm.
realize how special it is to have a life that you can choose to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'd like to go into that a bit more, when you say, obviously, I think I can understand when you say love your life, but when you say live your life, what is it? What do you mean by that? When you sort of, I won't put any words into you. What do you mean by that yourself?
Well, make the most of it. And
Mm,
with my Women Worth and Wellness, the one aspect that I really, really emphasize as the starting point is to be
mm,
healthy. We take our health for granted. We take our bodies for granted. We get up in the morning and we go, 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 and we keep on going until something stops us. And so don't take your health for granted. Make it a priority every day and make it a priority not just for today, but what do I need to do today that is going to help me be healthy longer term as well?
yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I think it's timely to remind everyone at any point, but obviously, again, this time of year when people are thinking of the whole New Year's resolution thing, I was thinking about this earlier. I don't think I wouldn't say I'm against anything like New Year's resolutions. I think you can set new goals and any time of year, but it's a great time to do it. But that emphasis that you just said in relation to health and, as you say, not to dismiss it or even be sort of blasé with it. It's kind of
Right.
like to really be conscious about it. And you say just that little bit each day. Now you mentioned there, we're going to go into so much more about the the program or what you do essentially, and you've been doing for a number of years. And you said you start with health there. Tell me more about what it expands into then.
Well, I was recruited into the wealth management industry, which was
Hmm.
terrific. When I was there, I was sorry I hadn't been there 20 years earlier. It's a great role for women. And so you've got to have all your licenses. And of course, I'm working with a great company. And they said, okay, all systems are go, Nancy, except you don't have any clients. You've got to go find some
Yeah.
clients. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Anyway, their advice was spot on because they said, who you will want to prospect are people that you want to work with over a long period of time, people whose lives you feel you can add your unique value to. So it was then that I thought, okay, I'm going to focus on women, not exclusively, but my first career was at Procter and Gamble. I was one of the first female managers in Canada. And of course, that was a big deal, but then they kind of forget
Mm.
about you. And so I thought, women are really coming into their own. They're starting to earn more. They're really starting to take control of their lives. I'm going to focus on women. So, one of the investment companies that I was working with at the time, they too had come up with a whole program focusing on women called Investing in Yourself. So what I've now got is a whole program. All I need to do is curate it. So I did some
Mm.
marketing, did some advertising, created an event in an exclusive golf club, invited as many women as wanted to come, and I had over 150 that showed up, which was amazing. I'd
Yeah.
really hit a sweet spot. So now I've got all these prospects that I need to book appointments with and meet with them one at a time. And as I started to meet with them, you realize that women have got a disproportionate amount of responsibility in their families for their family's health and well being. And I thought, well, how much knowledge do these women have to be the nurse practitioner in their own family? So that's when
Mm.
I started to partner with not for profit health related organizations that were focusing on women's health. In Toronto, we have this fabulous hospital called Women's College Hospital, over 100 years old. And of course, that's exclusively what they focus on women's health research, programs, seminars, treatment, all sorts of things. They're offering different seminars, so I would invite my clients and they'd bring their friends. I would charge a nominal amount. So I'm starting to introduce the whole business of enhancing your net worth through charitable
Mm.
donations. But, James, as we know, when you are giving or extending, more often than not, the true recipient of that gift is the person who is giving. So it enhances your self worth. And here we
Yeah.
are, it's like 32 years later with Women
Yeah.
Within Wellness, and now it's all about philanthropy and legacy planning by women. So really, I had no idea what I was heading into at the time, but
Sure.
that was really when health became the first priority. And then we'll start talking about the wealth plan.
Yeah. Isn't that thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, it's as brief as possible, 30 years of what you've been doing, but how it started, because that's really interesting. And I love the fact that you said you didn't know what you were starting when you were starting it.
Right,
It's just the fact that you had as you say, the qualifications in wealth management, you'd got the role, but it's like, well, I need to find the client now. I need
right.
to be able to, and, but I think it's a really good example as well, because people who may be watching or listening who are maybe potentially in business or trying to start a business, that specificity of you finding who do you want to work for. And you say, not necessarily exclusively, but zeroing on, well, actually, I'm going to focus this on women. And I'd say at the time, this is going back into, say, mid 90s,
Right.
I'd say you were probably quite unique in that regard. Would that be
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And now when I look back in retrospect, I'm sorry, my word actually for 2026 is amplify because
Yeah, I
I've
love
been on
that.
so many podcasts talking about this. And really, people will say, how did you know to connect health and wealth? Well, for me, it was kind of second to none. But when I look
Mm,
back, I'm sorry I didn't do more amplification at the time. But it's kind of like you're onto something and you're making progress and you're kind of shocked that it's being received so positively that you're just kind of taking it all in rather than pushing on and doing a whole lot more.
sure,
So
absolutely. And I'd say as well that when you're, as you say, you could think it's always that thing of looking back. You think of the shoulda, woulda, coulda type at the time,
correct,
but it's also, I think, from my own perspective, sometimes you do have to almost start where you are as well, and you can only do
correct.
so much at any given time. And as much as the connection might be just there, but it's how you build things out, isn't it? And you have to kind of start with somewhere. And I'm still interested in sort of when you started that, and you initially was obviously trying to find women to bring them in as, wealth management clients. Were you, because again, at that point in time, the, was it, do you think that women were being ignored? Was there an ignorance towards the women who had that, the sort of essentially had accrued that money at a time? Were they just not considered? What was it that, because 150 women at your first event is really
Amazing.
incredible, really.
Right.
Yeah. So were they just not catered for, I suppose is the question.
Exactly. I think women were just
Yeah.
taken for granted. And women
Yes.
women were considered to be women. It's like, well,
Yes.
it's a woman. When in
Yeah.
fact, once you start to get involved and you lower the microscope and you have deeper conversations, you realize there's a whole lot more there that people have not paid attention to. For
Mm.
example, a lot of the health related research that was done, women were considered to be little men. when in
Yes.
fact, women's symptoms for different types of health-related issues are quite different. And
Yeah.
it's still on that continuum where we're still
Yes.
learning more and more and more about all the differences that do exist.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a slight tangent here, but like I was thinking about this earlier. I don't know why it came into my head because I've had different women on in the last year talking about in this very field of health and from different perspectives. And a lady who was talking to you about fertility, she's a fertility expert in the US there. And all these, when they would talk to all these women about the various sort of researches, medical research over the years, that so much of it was focused on men
Correct.
cause and this is the and in all different fields. 'Cause I think in relation, I was talking to people regarding the neurodiversity, was again, if you think so, as a was always focused on young boys instead of young girls, and then and all women now are getting I would have had misdiagnosed or not diagnosed 30, 40 years ago and all this sort of stuff. But one of the awful things that I think that's still probably happening now, and I spoke to many women last year, about menopause and
Definitely.
just women in general and obviously menstrual cycles and the fact that one of the reasons research isn't done in women is because of that thing, because it essentially, for a better word, skews the data. And
Correct.
it's basically it's too complicated
Right.
if you want to put it that way, which is just, if you think about it, it's just appalling
Correct.
because it's literally half of the population is not getting the due care from a medical perspective that it really deserves.
Exactly. No, exactly.
Yeah.
We have, well, we have Women's College Hospital in Toronto.
Yeah.
We also have Sinai, Mount Sinai, and they've got an amazing Sinai Women's Health program. And they
Mm,
came out with a marketing campaign in the spring, last spring, called
mm,
Hot and Bothered, and they put it front and center. And I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, I'm well past menopause, but I remember being in my 40s. And so I picked up on it and I used it as something to really push out and get a lot of people increase their awareness, guest speakers, whatever. For example, one of the symptoms in menopause is brain fog.
mm,
Okay, if you ever want to find out how healthy you are, apply for life insurance. And life insurance companies will not give you the best rates for life insurance if there's any twinge at all of any health related issue. So they often say that this brain fog is diagnosed as early dementia. So you can see if you're a woman applying for life insurance and this comes up, brain fog, they'll say, oh no, we'll have to rate this person because we think this is early dementia. So all of these little intricacies of health related issues pertaining to women are now starting to surface. The other thing is women now are expecting and demanding that more research be done on women. Melinda French Gates, for example, has just set aside $100 million for more research into women's health with the attitude that women can't be their best if they're not at their best. So
100%.
all those sorts of things, that momentum is really, really bubbling up and taking on steam, which is super.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, as I say, it took me on a tangent, but bringing it back to, so you started in the 90s with it in this from the wealth management perspective. When did you said there about bringing the health and the wealth together? Did that, to clarify, did that real happen quite early in what you were doing in this and
Yes.
coupling those two things together? Tell me
Yes.
about that then.
It did, because as I met with these women, you see that they're overwhelmed with all their
Yeah.
responsibilities as a nurse practitioner in their home. And I can still remember my mother saying, if you don't have your health, dear, you don't have anything. Like, in other words, eat your
Mm,
breakfast, stop eating that junk food, whatever. Like, you need to be healthy. And,
mm,
but the other thing too, as you work with a proper wealth advisor who's creating a wealth plan for you, that wealth plan needs to have anticipated health related challenges. It isn't just about, give me the best investment that's going to double in 5 years or whatever. You need to anticipate, what about a critical illness? What about a disability? What about premature death? Are you protected for those things? Or in the absence of that protection, are you going to have to draw down your retirement fund to support yourself? And more, as medical advisors are more difficult to come by, you can't afford to be sick. So investing
Yes.
in yourself and your health is a very, very smart thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It to add a little bit of context here, because I worked in the life assurance industry myself for a
There you
number of
go.
years
There you go.
in Ireland, more sort of behind the scenes and as a customer service side. But I worked with a lot of the advisors and directly, and I would have been a support for them. And it's from what you were saying there as well, like and how you approached it. I would suggest as well, you might have been a little bit ahead of your time in a sense of that holistic approach versus fill the form, get
Right.
the premium. Do you know what I mean? But
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. Because that's what it's, when you're in sales and you're in there, it's very much about get the client on board, isn't it? But taking that much more, what you said earlier, long term view, more
Right.
holistic approach,
Yep.
the sort of more than just what they're earning a role is. It's like, well, what they're doing, the other pressures they have in their lives and what that has impacts on. Because what's interesting as well, I think, from that perspective, from the wealth management or that sort of side of it, is if you connect with the client, for a better word, right, they'll be with you for 30 or 40 years,
Right.
could be, and then there'd be generations,
Correct.
children, nieces, nephews, what
Right.
have you. So it's so having did that approach that you took, did that enable you to essentially grow what you've done?
Exactly. Exactly. And you're absolutely right, because if you serve your client exceptionally well, it all comes back to you,
Yes.
because sooner or later they
Yes.
will see the value in what you created for them with their wealth plan. And of course, then you get referrals. So what's a
Mm,
better way to build your business than that way?
yeah, absolutely. So when did it for you, because one of the words that you said earlier and I read earlier, when did it sort of shift into the philanthropy? Because I'm really interested in
Oh,
where
that's a
that
good
word
question.
came from.
Well, I whenever I did these events with health-related organizations, like heart and stroke, for example, that's the
Mm,
leading cause of death for women, heart disease. And so we would do an event with the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and it would be the foundation that would be hosting the event. Well, they're in business to share knowledge, but at the same time, they're recruiting dollars as well. So I
mm,
would charge a nominal amount. And then with the wealth plan, we're starting to see how that charitable donation enhances your net worth. And so it just kept on building and building and building to the point now where women are earning a whole lot more, but they're also inheriting with a whole
mm,
lot more inheritance to come. And so
mm,
now women have a huge power opportunity with their wealth, both in terms of what they're earning, but also what they're inheriting. So stewardship of that wealth becomes increasingly important. And to your point, to what we talked about earlier, not every wealth advisor is a champion for philanthropy, because the success of wealth advisors is the number of assets they have under their jurisdiction. So is that person going to say, I think you might want to donate $15 to the, or $15,000 to the blah, blah, blah. So that's why, as a client, you need to know what your priorities are so that you can ask the wealth advisor. And if they resist, then it's probably time to go and work with somebody else. So
yeah.
there are a lot of dynamics that are going on that, you need to
Yeah.
pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it would be having that as part of what you do is again separates you from everyone else. It's specifically for you. So again, if you think about again trying to attract the people that are going to want to work with you, it's kind of again, it's a way of effectively weeding out the clients that aren't going to want to work with you as well, isn't it? Because if they're that way inclined, they're going to go, well, I'm going to want to work with you.
Right. And again, to your point, just building on that, really what you're doing is showing that you care about the client and that
Mm,
client's opportunity to make a contribution to a bigger world and a better world, not just for themselves, but for others as well.
yes.
One of the statements that I read recently is, when you're thinking of a legacy, think about leaving something behind that others can enjoy. How simple is that? But pretty dynamic.
Absolutely. And I'm interested then,
because you said it were like the women you first were talking about in the 90s, and the fact that they were there, that those women did have this wealth. And how would you say that in the 30 years that you've been working with these women, have they changed much? Has there been much difference in, as you say, from the women now, or from the women you first started meeting with those 30 years ago?
Well, quite frankly, they're not as bold as I would like them to be. They're
Okay,
still sort of,
yeah.
women never want to be front. Women always want to look their best and be their best, but they never really want to stand out. They don't have the courage to really put themselves front and center, whereas a man will welcome the opportunity. And a perfect example was I was at a breakfast a couple of years ago. There were 1,000 women present. And one lady who was there, her husband had just passed away, and they had agreed to donate $1 million to this. I think it was the Canadian Women's Foundation. And so the MC made this announcement, and she was sitting right at the next table to me. She didn't even stand up. We all applauded her. And I thought, "Oh my goodness, if that were a man, he wouldn't he'd be up on that stage so fast with his arms up in the air, and he'd be on the front page of the business section in the newspaper." So women and their philanthropy is quite different. It's
Yes,
very quiet, but they really need a proper wealth advisor to guide
yes,
them on how to make the greatest impact, great based on the amount of wealth that they have, and obviously based on their preferences and desires.
yeah.
So, it's like learning a new dance, really.
Hi, James here. If you've been watching and thinking, I would like to make a change but not sure where to start, that's where I can help. My 12-week coaching program will enable you to reconnect with what matters most and move forward with clarity and confidence. If that sounds like you, head over to jamesdeancoach.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. Well, I love the what you said there is almost like you still want women to be bolder. I think
Yes,
that's a really um powerful thing to say, because I would absolutely agree with you in that regard as well, because it's the uh to me it's when is it going back to what we see we can believe. You know what
right,
I mean? So it's
right,
not just, and I think it's not just necessarily for other women and for young women or girls. I think it's just for people in general. I think
correct.
it's because I think it still can have a positive impact for young men and boys. I don't think it has to be as
No,
black and white as we think. Where it's just to see someone that you can have a resonance with,
right,
and the more people we can see bold, whether they're women or men. But I think when I see the women that I look up to, whether it be in the public eye or in personal life, they're different. And that's what sometimes I'm looking for. It is different to a man. And so it's not that it's better or worse. It's just a different quality. So by not being that bit bolder, you're doing a disservice, arguably, to the people who could be inspired by you. Does that make
right.
sense?
Oh, no, definitely. That's why I think the world of Melinda French Gates. Because
Yeah.
she didn't have to do what she's doing with all that money. She really didn't. But she's really taking it as an opportunity to really step up and make a difference in the world in several different areas, which is wonderful. Really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Absolutely. For someone then who's been, I'd say, where you've been, in business as such for yourself for 30 years. A lot of people I've spoken to before or listened to this are maybe thinking of starting a business or thinking of, want to work for themselves and that. What would you say have been your biggest lessons from working in business yourself or working on a business?
Well, often we take advice from others. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is be careful who you take advice from, because not always that most powerful person that you think has wisdom is the right person to give you advice. So you
Mm,
have to pay attention to your inner self, but you also have to know that you are worthy. Like you
mm,
are worthy for stepping up and working things through and figuring things out and doing what you want to do and bringing your own uniqueness forward. That doesn't mean that you're going to be crass or disrespectful. It just means that you need to keep on going and figure things out and find a way to get the information that you need that will help you advance. And that's easier said than done, because often people will talk you out of things when in fact you shouldn't allow that to happen. You should talk to yourself and say, no, this is interesting, but I don't agree with that. I really want to keep on doing what I've got in mind. And this is another person that I'm going to speak with. So I guess that point is don't be discouraged. Really don't be discouraged.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is, because I think it's a really good point, because I think in a lot of the things we can do is, and I do it myself, is you could keep looking for the outside, as you said, and keep looking and almost keep asking the question until you get the answer you want, or whatever, versus, well, actually, there's some people absolutely will give you good advice or give you a good steer, but sometimes it's really avoiding what you kind of know yourself, and as opposed to maybe asking that in a question, or in that does know what you need to do or can do. So yeah, it can be sometimes a bit of a get out clause by keeping asking everyone
Right,
else.
exactly.
Yeah. But it's also the point on that as well, though, is then when you do answer yourself and you do take it, is that self-worth, is I think is a huge thing. Is that something that I'm assuming that's something you help the women that come work with you on your program then?
Definitely. And it's also something that other women have helped me with, which is interesting
Yes. Yeah.
because in two separate instances, I've had a woman, not the same woman, two different women, turn my head 180 degrees in another direction from which I was headed. And it's made all
Mm,
the difference in the world. So that learning is to pay attention to what other people think you should be doing, which is amazing.
interesting.
You know, I would not have
Yeah.
been in the wealth management business if this one woman hadn't said, Nancy, because I was about to go into a consulting practice and
Okay.
she had been outplaced as a VP at a big, US based company in Canada, bag load of money, went to a wealth advisor, was really disappointed. And that's when she decided that's what she was going to do. And then she was the one that I met because this consulting firm was one that she had worked with. So I was having coffee with her to talk about that consulting firm. She got to know who I was and what I'd done and what I was looking for and said, I think you should consider wealth management. There are very few women. Meet with my boss. So again, you've got nothing to lose. You can keep
Mm,
on going the way you were headed, or, okay, I'll have and of course, talk to him. We hit it off. That's when he said, go get some licenses. You got to pass your exams and come back. Anyway, it was 180 degrees. This whole podcasting experience came up from a woman that I met probably about 3 or 4 years ago. She moved from Toronto to Miami, and out of the blue, 6 months ago, she said, Nancy, you've got to do this podcasting experience. It wasn't like this is something I wanted to do that I tracked
yeah.
after to get info. Out of the blue, she said, Nancy, this is something, and it's been a game changer. So the message is pay attention to what other people think you should do. And often those interactions will come out of the blue.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the really the interesting point in that, because it's trying to find that balance between the two. And I think sometimes it's when, again, I'll talk about my experience, when I'm almost desperately looking for advice, is because I'm trying to avoid the thing that I know I need to do.
Right,
You know what I mean? It's almost trying to offload it when you know what you need to do, or what you should do or could do, whatever it is. And then, as you say, at the times where you're not necessarily even knowing, you're not, it's just having, you say, a conversation with someone. And it's even a great point, because I've said this a few times on the podcast myself. When I started the show, maybe this is coming up 2 or 3 years ago now, and I had done it a sort of a solo show before, and I kind of got quickly bored of it because I can't stand my own voice over and over, and I was
right.
running out of things to say.
Yeah,
And then I was doing like blogs and stuff again and things like that, and articles. And someone literally on a Facebook post or something, I shared an article, was like, do you do a podcast? Because I'm more likely to listen than read. And I was like, that's interesting, because I'm more likely to listen than read as well,
right, right, right.
and I'm probably better at conversation than I am at writing. And I was just like, okay. So it was purely on the basis of a comment that someone put on it, so I hadn't the intention. I hadn't. And again, it was almost like, okay, well, I'm just going to, like you
Give it a
just
try.
try. And whatever, 20 episodes later, you know what I
Amazing.
mean?
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's, it's being almost intuitive to the advice that, or the suggestion that someone gives. And as you say, open to the next conversation. So it's like, well, I don't have to I'll go have a chat with the boss, and it's the point that you said, I think would you kind of just, as you're talking about, it's like you hit it off
Right.
with the gentleman.
Yeah.
And so much of it is still about human connection.
And listening.
So much.
And listening.
Yes.
Listening.
100%.
This person that I've interacted with, they've really sincerely listened to who I am and what I'm seeking. And then they're able to make a suggestion. If they hadn't done that deep listening, how would they ever have known me and whether or not this might be appropriate? The last thing you want to do is refer somebody to your boss and they turn out to be a complete mismatch.
Yes.
So part of this success was with her. The other thing you're reminding me of is when I first started in the wealth management business. So now I've got a boss, now I've got my prospects, and now you've got to book the appointments and work them all through. And this boss, I still remember what he said. He said, Nancy, you're going to be tracking after this person, this person, this person, and this person. He said, I can tell you 100%, your clients are not going to come from those people you're tracking after. They're going to come from somebody over here and somebody over here. So at any given point in time, you've got to be 360 degrees because they're going to come into your sphere. And if you're not receptive, you're going to miss the opportunity. And then once you build your business with those kinds of people, certainly those prospects you're coming after, they're going to start to fold in because you've got a new appreciation. It's, human dynamics are very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a huge point there. It's that one. It's two things. It comes to awareness, isn't it? It's that thing
It is.
of having a sort of an element of focus, but then also an element of being able to adapt that and
Adapt.
be open to the opportunity, isn't it?
Right.
And sort of be getting kind of come back to the listening, but it's also interesting. It's like not necessarily what you think is going to be, as you say, the client. And it could be, I'm sure you've had this as well over the years, where someone could have known about you for months or years even. And it's only at a certain point they come back when it might have been the right time, or they didn't have the money to invest, or whatever it was. And they come back and they go, oh, well, actually, I knew about you for a couple of years. It's that whole element of showing up all the time
Right.
as you are.
Right.
So it's not because you're trying to impress or not because you're trying to show off, or it's because that's who you are. And if you do that enough times, they'll come.
I remember being in a dress shop. You're reminding me of another example.
Yeah.
And this woman, a nice woman, but, she's earning a little bit more than minimum wage. And I'm shopping away or whatever. And then she says, what do you do? And so I told her, and she said, oh my goodness, I need your help. Because I've got a problem I'm living with my mother. We can't afford to keep this house. And all of a sudden, I'm off on a whole new tangent. They became best friends of mine, the two. Saved the house. I remember the house was appraised at $750,000 at the time. Now it's worth like 7.5 mil. Like the Toronto real estate has gone. She was just forever grateful. But to get to that point, we had to work our way through a lot. The next step is that you now have to establish yourself as that trusted advisor in terms of the advice that you're giving them, because obviously they have been void of advice and there were other family members involved. So all of a sudden it was quite a complex situation. But all you do is bring your best forward, a lot of your training, but more importantly, really listening and understanding where these people are coming from and what the biggest challenge is of all, and then work your way through it,
Yeah.
which is fun. I mean, that's
Yeah.
your job.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's what I love there is because there's obviously the element of as you say, the training and the licensing, understanding your products, your
Right.
financials, understanding that, being able to create a plan for someone, understanding how that project or programs and all those things work to benefit the person. But it's also where you said there, it's bringing it back to what the client is
Correct.
looking for. most important to them. And then say initially it's making sure they have the house, because I'm sure there's I in my experience as well, from where I had the previous career, you have a lot of, it's the same in every industry, a lot of sales advisors or wealth managers who are, they literally just want to sell the
Right.
brightest, shiniest thing, versus, because it gets the best commission, arguably. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
versus, well, what's the right thing for this client right now? Because if you do that right now, you might still sell them or get them the bright, shiny thing, but
Longer
you might
term.
not longer term. Exactly. But what you're doing is the right thing for the client,
Correct.
the person.
Exactly.
Yeah,
No, lots of fun.
absolutely.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. And so how did you, so you're doing that. One thing I really want to nail that and get into is, how did you then, so you're doing the wealth management side of it and bringing clients on board on that. Where did then creating your own sort of the program that you have? When did you decide to actually, I'm going to have a specific program for women that you use now?
Well, as soon as I decided that I was prospecting women, and actually I was part of this program called Strategic Coach. And really the crux of this whole program, it's quite complex and lots of different things that he gets into. But right at the outset, he says you need to define what your unique ability is
Yes,
and take you through exercise. And he said, once you define what your unique ability is, then you put a trademark on it immediately. Now, my first career was at Procter and Gamble, so you know the
yes,
power of a brand. So
yes,
that's where the Women Worth and Wellness brand came from, which I
yes,
trademarked immediately. And then, of course, you go on from there. So it wasn't the only thing I did. But during the
yes,
90s, it was a huge opportunity for women who are just coming into their own and starting to earn a whole lot more and money that they had control of. You know, the previous decade or two, it was in a couple. So, the money was more often than not directed by the male. But now all of a sudden,
yes,
women have the power. James, it was also the decade when women decided they wanted to learn how to play golf.
yes,
And so I started the first golf tournament for Women's College Hospital. And so, you just picked up on opportunity and you kept on
yes.
going. And I was ahead of the pack with these different things that I was offering,
Absolutely.
which was super.
Yeah, I mean, that was the point. So it's the fact that you started it so straight away, and that again, that bit of advice that that person gave you is like, come up with the ability and
Yes.
get it in, get it. So,
Yes.
so the fact that you come up with that women worth wellness that long ago, it literally is ahead of the game. Like that
Right.
sounds like it was created in the last 5 years. It really does. It's obviously stayed and stayed the test of time in a sense of that one branding and messaging.
Right.
It's really is because, you know, wellness in the 90s, it sounds just almost, it doesn't sound like it existed then. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like that word.
Yes. Continuation of the hippie generation. What the heck does that mean? It's like,
Yeah,
forget
yeah.
about
Well,
wellness, get to work.
yeah. Well, especially I suppose the 90s as well. So I'm in Ireland now, but I've been all over the 90s, over sort of a little bit in Ireland, but more so in the UK, was very much the sort of women were coming into it's similar in a sense of working in that, but there was almost this copying culture, the sort of Bridget Jones, the sort of
Yes.
drinking, the sort of what they called it, the term over here was a ladette. So it was like,
My
so it was
goodness.
like, so yeah, so as if they were the same as, I say, the same as men going out and all this, because they had this money. So it wasn't necessarily about, definitely wasn't about wellness. It was about splurging the money
Yes.
on
Party on.
drinking and all this. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I think that sort of the word wellness in the 90s, I just don't think it would have been, it wouldn't, I don't think it would have
No, it wouldn't
existed
have stuck.
over
No.
this over the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I meant, and when you brought me back to it now with that wellness word, and you spoke about it earlier as well, specifically when you're looking at women and still doing over the years, is one of the things at that point in time, they're starting to earn more, they're starting to get more senior positions more frequently, more women are
Correct.
doing this. But the point you said there is like, but they're still doing the disproportionate amount of stuff within the home as well. So there's still arguably the primary care role of children. You know, they're still doing the organization of whatever the home and things like that. was that something that you spoke about, or did that come up in conversations, or was it purely keeping this professional and sense of financial? Did those conversations come up?
Yes, of course. And if
Yeah.
women were getting worn down because they've got all these responsibilities, the simple thing is to say you cannot continue doing this because you're wearing yourself out. And
Mm.
underlying you is you who wants to help everybody. Well, you become more unable all the time as you wear yourself out. So you got to back it up. You got to make yourself the priority. And you've got to think about what are some things that others can do. Now, more often than not, those others doing some of the things that you're currently doing will mean that they're not going to do it the same way you think it should be done. It's like, so what? So what? Let them do it their own way and be thankful the job is getting done and you don't have to do it, and give them lots of praise so you can layer on some more things for them to do.
Yeah. Well, that's actually it's a really great point, actually. The way you just said there is, one is like the couple of things there. One, you can't do it all. You will
No,
literally
right,
burn out.
right,
Or if you don't, it's like, if it's, especially if it's in whatever relationship, it could challenge the relationship. If you don't address those things, do you know what I mean? It could fracture and all this sort of stuff. But as you say, if you are able to sort of share those responsibilities, or even offload those and give it to someone else. And as you say, though, but if they do it differently, don't judge them for doing it differently.
exactly.
Because again, it's just going to cause that fracture or that sort of butting of heads again. So it's kind of like it's almost like you can't have it both ways.
No,
You
what's
can't, you
important?
can't,
What is important here?
exactly.
I saw a really
100%.
funny post recently on Facebook. The place was a mess. The mother is on the floor, and there are a couple of kids, and everything is spread all over the place. And the father is standing behind the couch. And he says, the next person that makes a mess goes to their room. So the mother makes a big mess. So she
Yeah.
gets to go to her room and have a
Yes.
rest.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like, okay,
Yeah, exactly. Well, what you said there reminds me of, there's a clip, I wouldn't be able to tell you names or context, or just a clip I've seen a few times online, where it's a lady, I assume in a similar situation, this a podcaster, she's talking about, uh, I don't know if it was herself in the context of when she's having her children, and she's talking about when she's bathing the baby. And she said when her husband comes in to do it, and she's like almost critiquing him she's bathing the child. And her own mother says to her, like, don't you become the expert on that child,
no,
you know, because he's going to do stuff that you're going to think is absolutely off the wall and bonkers. And it's never going to be the way you're going to do it,
right,
but you just have to let him do it. Or
exactly.
her, vice versa, the other
Yep,
way. Like, you kind of have to let, and it's like, you just have to let the other person find their own way of doing what you think is the most simplest of things, because otherwise you're just going to be always looking to correct it. And that's just going to create a negative situation, isn't it?
right. But sometimes it just takes courage to push back because nobody ever wants to create a fuss. Sometimes it's
Yes,
easier to just do the job rather than to say,
of
look,
course.
I think this is something that you could do. And they'll go, what? Me? That's something you
Yeah.
can do it, blah, blah, blah. So you've got to have the
Yeah.
courage to push back. Again, I still remember RBG, one of the Supreme Court justices in the US who was revered. They had one child, and she said one day the daycare phoned her and said, your child is sick. I think you should come and pick him up or her up. And she said, what are you calling me for? She's got a father as well. Like,
Yeah.
so you got to push back
Yes.
and not keep
Absolutely.
taking it all on. And
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
too much.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, I don't know, this is my perspective on this as well, though. I think there's an element of, whether in relationships of couples, and I see this as mean as all relationships in any context, and I think it's shifting. But I think there's an element where there needs to be these conversations, 100%, and the willingness of one to the pushback, but also the willingness of someone to step up
Correct.
and sort of take on and thinking, move out of whether a perceived gender role or whatever role you might think, and almost ignore that. So it's like, I'll give you just a personal example in the sense of like, so in my sort of relationship with my wife, I'm the person that does the shopping. I'm the person who does the majority of the cooking in the house and stuff.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And yeah, and I pretty much
Yeah,
maintain the house. Like we don't have children, but we've got dogs, and so and it's not because of any other reason that just the way that our lives have worked and towards. And it's like it's in some ways it's not a sort of rebellious act. There's nothing. It's just like I'm good at it. I can do it. I have the time to do it.
we do. Yeah,
Happy to do it. It's like, and it's like it's there's you have those conversations. So I think it's like sometimes where there is these element of still arguably women having the disproportionate responsibilities. But it's like there's an argument of couples have to come together, whatever
right,
makeup, and
right.
have those conversations.
Exactly.
Do it, and because the person might want to step up, but I don't think
Yeah, I
they
don't want
just
to
both. No
interfere.
one knows exactly, or stepping on toes and all these sorts of things. Is like have those conversations, have them, and it's not like it's not this sort of like Mary Poppins type thing. Sometimes, yeah, you don't want to have, you don't have want to have to be. It's a using his own shot, but shit has to get done sometimes. So
Exactly, exactly.
step up and do it, because if you do those things and engage and you do those things, then you move into the sort of wellness piece. So that's the point I'm
Correct.
coming back to what you
Yep.
talk about, because if all these things are just organized and done, and that stuff becomes, it's not a sort of taking away. Do you know what I mean? Because I think so much of this takes away from people. And I think especially women, that the wellness is almost an afterthought. Would that
Right.
be right?
It just enhances the relationship. It
Yeah.
enhances it because both parties can see what the other one is doing. And
Yes.
and they admire what the other person is doing. They say, "This is great. This is wonderful."
Yeah.
And actually, that's
Yes.
another key point is lots of feedback frequently, because again, we take it for granted.
Yeah. And the last point I would add to this as well is like, if you have these conversations and you kind of do this as a collective or a partnership or whatever it is, it's like you also then have to leave guilt at the door.
Right.
You can't, if you kind of work out a system and stuff, and one means that one person is potentially working longer than the other or what have you, and the other one, it's like don't make the other
No, no.
person or
No,
feel
no.
guilty, or don't you feel guilty for what you, it's about the collective. It's about what you're trying to build together or as a group of families. So it's like you kind of also have to leave those things aside and to make it work, in my opinion.
Right. And if that feeling surfaces, you've got to nip it. You have to say,
Yeah,
"Can we have a conversation? Because
totally.
this is the
Yeah,
way I'm feeling." And the other person may
yeah,
not have had a clue this was how you were
correct.
feeling. So if you're not bringing it to
Yeah,
their attention, then you're at fault. You're at fault as much as
yeah,
they are.
yeah,
And just
absolutely,
keep the dialogue going.
absolutely. I could see, Nancy, obviously the fact that obviously it was so long ago that you wanted to focus on women and you with what you were doing, and they mean so much to you. Well, what is it about the working with these women even now that really kind of lights you up? What is it
Well,
specifically? I'd love to
I'm
know.
starting, I said my word for 2026 is amplify.
Yeah. Yes.
So on LinkedIn, I'm defined as a legacy advisor to accomplished women. And I thought I'm going to start a speaker series with accomplished women. So this is what we're just putting the finishing touches on. And the first speaker is going to be a horsewoman because this is the year of the horse. And all
Love it.
sorts of positivity is coming from how the year of the horse is defined. Google it and you'll see it's all about courage, action, momentum, all sorts of positivity. Last year was the year of the snake. And they say that the
Wow.
skin has been shed so that, I
Yeah.
mean, what do I know? I'm only knowing what I'm reading, but I'm
Yeah.
buying into it. And I'm saying that
Yeah.
this year is going to be so positive because of this incredible definition of what the year of the horse is. So I've got all these accomplished women lined up, and it will be a luncheon series. We'll take an hour for each one. And in some cases, we've got two per month, and they will simply take 15 minutes to tell us their YOLO. You only live once. Now, what have they done to create all of their accomplishments so far? We want to hear that story. But how I define an accomplished woman is someone who has achieved a lot, but somebody who is still working towards creating a whole lot more. They're making a difference in the world one way or another. And so I only want this to be an inspirational series. We're not going to talk about heart disease, or we're not going to talk about whether it's bonds versus equity. We're not going to talk, we're just talking about life as a continuum. And I've
Yeah.
often said, we used to say, go big or go home. Now it's go big and keep going, like keep
Yeah.
going. And so I think it's going to be really interesting. And then I thought, this is kind of like an orchestra where you hear this instrument and then you hear that instrument and then you hear and then you hear. And then I thought there needs to be one event at the end, which will be in December, which is the crescendo. So a
Yeah.
lot of these women will be present. And I've got another great guest speaker in mind to just kind of bring it all together, which then gives great momentum for 2027. It's
Yeah.
like if all of these good things have happened and you've learned from all of these different accomplished women, then what are you going to do to bring your uniqueness forward, to be joyful and to be happy and to make a contribution to make the world a little bit better, however you can?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to
That,
be fun.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a it's a wonderful evolution to what
Right.
you've been doing. Do you
Evolution.
know what I mean?
Evolution.
Over the years, yeah, to really now, and then the word you said, amplify, is your word for the year, which is a wonderful word. I love it whenever anyone says it, because you really get the resonance, I think, of just like a big sort of bass, or that's a big speaker, and just the sort of spreading out of it, like it just going everywhere. I think it's a wonderful word, but also the sort of the now to be able to get those women in a room to hear from them and then to inspire more.
Right.
And as you say, it's not, and then not to the point of not, okay, these women are done, let's have
No,
a listen
not
to
at
them. It's
all.
like, no, they've done so much and they are still
Still
going.
going.
And I think it'd be sounds like a wonderful series. Absolutely. I think that's a
And
wonderful thing.
right. And the role I've always loved is being a catalyst. I never
Yes.
wanna be the
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
one. I wanna be, "Okay, this is the idea, these are the people, let's put it together," and put them out there for other people to hear what
Yeah.
they it's like what you're doing with your podcast. It's the
Sure.
same
Yeah,
idea.
absolutely.
Same idea, very same idea.
100%. No, absolutely. Because I think and that's what actually I love about doing this, is to be able to, one, get a front row seat and learn from people, but
Right.
I love to be able to put other people in the spotlight as well and learn from, and that same word of inspiration, I think, is a wonderful thing of being able to, and my sort of take on it is that someone doesn't think, oh, I want to be like Nancy. It's like, Jesus, look what Nancy's done. I could apply what she's done into what I want to do.
Bring
And
your
you might not
unique
anything to exactly what's your the unique ability.
right,
100%.
right.
And
Everybody's
take it
different.
forward. Absolutely. I have a last few questions. It's been wonderful to chat to you, but I have a few questions I ask every person,
Well,
Nancy. So the first one.
we'll do a part 2. Get in touch with me
Yeah,
anytime and we'll do part 2. But ask me
absolutely. Then we got more to ask. Absolutely.
I've
But
got
what
a
a first one.
I've got at 12 o'clock, so I've got 5 minutes to go.
5 minutes. Well, we'll fly through this. So,
Okay.
a quote or phrase that is important to you.
I go back to what I said at the beginning, which is live your life and love your life. And Peter Buffett, who's the son of Warren Buffett, he wrote a book called Life is What You Make It. And I agree with that. I mean, that's spot on.
100%. Absolutely. Who's been your biggest influence, would you say?
Probably my mother. And she would be shocked to hear that. The more I talk about her in various ways, the more I realize that she really was unique. And I'm glad that I'm now appreciative to an even greater extent of all the things that she did.
Yeah. It is. I find I love it, the fact that when I ask that question, the majority of people, it's someone in the family, and
Wonderful.
usually a parent, because it is, and it's usually in retrospect. It's not necessarily at the time,
No,
but it's usually, yeah, but it's wonderful when you can connect to it. Love it. It's, as I say, Nancy, it's been wonderful to chat to you. Last question. What's important for your future?
I think, what's important is this whole amplification and transitioning. I really want to transition the Women Worth and Wellness brand because at this point it's just me. So I really want to
Mm,
transition it. But the essence will continue. It really will continue because it has become front and center in so many ways. It just will be a variation on a theme.
Absolutely. As I said, wonderful to chat to you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I will make sure we put the links in the show notes, but if you want to give a shout out, where can people can follow and connect with you online?
Send me an email, nancy@womenworthwellness.com, and I'll reply 24/7, either the night before or the morning after. And my website is there, but just, sending me an email puts you into our database, and then you'll definitely hear what we're up to.
We'll have that in the notes. Thank you so much for chatting to me, Nancy. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, James, my pleasure. Off and racing. It's the year of the horse. Google it,
Hey,
and you'll see
you
how magnificent it is.
fantastic. We might even put that in the notes as
You
well.
should. It's incredible.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.